The delivery driver kicked out of the luxury lobby 5 years later. He returns as the new owner. Wrong entrance. The security guard barked without looking up. Deliveries don't go through the front. Deshawn had just stepped into the marble lobby. The food bag still warm in his hand, and already he felt smaller than the tiles beneath his shoes. It wasn't the first time he'd been told to use the service entrance. But this time was different. The woman at reception had looked him straight in the eye, then whispered something to the guard. Within seconds, he was being pushed out through the revolving door, not because he was a delivery driver, but because he was a black delivery driver. He stood outside the glittering facade of the Astoria Grand Tower, anger rising in his chest like acid. His hoodie damp from the New York rain, his sneakers squeaking, his pride bruised. The rich came and went, barely noticing the young man trying to hold onto his dignity. But Deshawn noticed. He noticed everything. He delivered the food anyway, through the back, past the dumpsters, past the leaky pipe that dripped like the building's own conscience. Floor 29, apartment 2903. A Mr. Evan Krall, CEO of Krall Tech, the very face of wealth and polished cruelty. Krall had ordered sushi, miso soup, and an imported kombucha. Deshawn handed over the bag with a tight-lipped smile, his knuckles white around the receipt. Krall didn't tip. That night, Deshawn quit his delivery job. He went home to his shared studio in the Bronx, where paint peeled from the ceiling and roaches moved with more confidence than most tenants. He opened his old laptop, logged into a free coding course, and whispered to himself like a promise. Never again. Never again would he be looked through. Never again would he be dismissed, belittled, erased. Deshawn wasn't always a delivery driver. He'd once dreamed of tech. He was good with logic, obsessed with how things connected. But college was expensive and life wasn't fair. His mom had worked 2 jobs after his dad was locked up for a crime he didn't commit. Dreams didn't pay rent. But now Deshawn made a plan. 1 year learn to code. 2 years build an app. 5 years own his future. And he stuck to it like breath in winter. He woke before dawn, coded before work, coded after dinner, fell asleep with tutorial voices looping in his dreams. He failed, then failed better. He joined forums, found mentors, entered contests. He sold his PlayStation to afford better Wi-Fi. He wrote messy code, then better code. He started freelancing. He got a client, then 2, then 10. By year 3, he launched RoomLink, a smart rental app for finding roommates without the shady scams. It caught fire in the urban housing market. Investors noticed. Users poured in. Deshawn's name showed up on tech blogs, then panels, then Forbes 30 under 30. And then one winter morning, a real estate agent called. There's a luxury high-rise going up for sale. Quiet listing. Midtown. Pricey, but with the right vision. Deshawn froze at the name. Astoria Grand Tower. The same building. The same lobby. The same shame he'd carried like a second skin. He said 2 words. I'll buy. 5 years after being kicked out of its lobby, Deshawn stepped through the same gleaming doors, this time wearing a custom-tailored navy suit, flanked by lawyers and architects. His face had hardened, his presence unignorable. The receptionist's eyes widened as he approached. She didn't recognize him. He didn't expect her to. But the guard, the one who shoved him out, still there, still guarding the glass cage of wealth. The man squinted at him. Can I help you? Deshawn paused, smiled, then handed him the deed. You already did. The silence in the lobby was thick. The guard stared down at the paper in his hand, blinking like it couldn't possibly be real. Deshawn didn't say anything else. He let the moment hang, heavy and suffocating, like all the years he'd swallowed his rage just to survive. Then, slowly, he turned and walked past the front desk, unchallenged this time, and stepped onto the marble flooring that once rejected him. He made his way to the elevator. A sleek, silver box that once denied him access now opened like it had always been his. The mirrored walls caught his reflection. Confident, composed, but beneath it all, still carrying the echo of the boy who had once stood outside in the rain. As the elevator rose, memory did too. The hallways hadn't changed, still too quiet, too sterile, too proud of their silence. Deshawn passed the 20th floor, then 25th, then 29th. His jaw tightened as the number blinked to life. He hadn't come here to look back, but he couldn't help it. He stepped off and walked to apartment 2903. The same door, same brushed steel number. He knocked. A pause. Then footsteps. A click of the lock. The door opened. Evan Krall, slightly older now, still sleek, still arrogant, stood in the doorway holding a phone to his ear. He froze when he saw Deshawn. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice clipped. Deshawn smiled. "No delivery today." Evan squinted. "Do I know you?" "You did. Briefly. Sushi. Miso soup. Kombucha." He paused, letting it sink in. "No tip." Evan's face changed. His lips parted like he wanted to say something clever, but nothing came. "I just bought this building," Deshawn said. "Thought I'd stop by the first unit I ever visited." Evan laughed, hollow. "You're joking." "I'm not." There was a beat of silence. "I could buy it back," Evan said, posturing. Deshawn shrugged. "Maybe, but not today." He turned and walked away, each step echoing through the hallway like a thunderclap. Back in his new office on the penthouse level, formerly the gym, now transformed into sleek black glass and warm oak, Deshawn looked out over the Manhattan skyline. The city had always looked so far away from the Bronx, like a dream you could only touch in pieces. Now it lay at his feet. He sipped his coffee slowly. No more deliveries, no more locked doors. But ownership didn't mean peace. Owning the tower came with responsibility. And as he looked through the financial records, the history of the building whispered ugly truths. Rent hikes that pushed out long-term tenants, discriminatory application processes, complaints filed and buried, security incidents that always seemed to target people who looked like him. The building wasn't just bricks and glass, it was a machine that had been rigged to favor the few and punish the rest. Deshawn wasn't here to repeat that. He was here to burn the machine down and rebuild it fairer, louder, better. His first move was public. He held a press conference in the very lobby he'd once been barred from. "I'm not just here as the new owner," he told the cameras. "I'm here to make sure no one else gets told they don't belong just because of how they look or what job they do." Social media exploded. Some called him a hero. Others mocked him. Some said he was playing the race card. But Deshawn didn't care. He wasn't here for likes. He installed new training programs for the staff, real ones, not the kind with slide decks and fake empathy. He hired a new head of security, a Latina former NYPD sergeant who knew what injustice looked like on both sides of the badge. He restructured the leasing department, diversifying the team and implementing blind application reviews. He added income-based housing units on the top floors that had never before been available to anyone below a certain tax bracket. Some rich tenants threatened to leave. "Let them," Deshawn said. "This building isn't a trophy anymore. It's going to be a home." But with change came pushback. Someone spray-painted "stick to deliveries" on the service entrance one night. Another time, his car tires were slashed. Deshawn didn't flinch. He'd faced worse. And he knew the system never gave up power quietly. One night, after a long board meeting, he was riding the elevator down alone when it stopped unexpectedly at the 15th floor. A woman stepped in, elderly, white, with sharp blue eyes and a fur coat that probably cost more than his old apartment. She looked him up and down. "You must be the new owner," she said, voice brittle. "I am," he said. She studied him a moment. "You remind me of my son's college roommate. Bright kid. Went to MIT. Black too." Deshawn raised an eyebrow. "A lot of us do." She pursed her lips. "I didn't mean it like that." "Did you?" They rode in silence until the lobby. Before exiting, she turned to him. "Don't let this place swallow you," she said. "It's colder than it looks." Deshawn didn't respond, but he understood exactly what she meant. Months passed. The building began to change, not just structurally, but spiritually. There were community events now. Book clubs, youth programs, art in the halls. The lobby no longer felt like a museum, it felt like a station, pulsing with life. and people noticed. Deshawn was approached to expand the model. Other luxury properties were watching. Some wanted to invest. Some wanted to copy. But one offer caught his attention. A joint project with the city to create a new line of hybrid income skyscrapers. Not just condos. Communities. Deshawn read the offer, then reread it. Then he walked out onto the building's rooftop and stood under the open sky. This was bigger than proving a point. This was a movement. But just as he prepared to sign, a letter arrived. It was from a law firm. Evan Kroll was suing him. The claim: reverse discrimination, defamation, targeted harassment. Kroll accused Deshawn of using his personal vendetta to damage his reputation and devalue his condo. He wanted millions in damages and an injunction to prevent Deshawn from making political statements through building policies. The press had a field day. Suddenly, Deshawn's story was being retold through a different lens. Some headlines praised him. Others smeared him. Cable shows debated whether woke ownership was hurting the real estate market. Deshawn's legal team was ready. But he didn't just want to fight in court. He wanted the truth to be louder than the lie. So he gave one last interview. In it, he said, "I didn't become successful to stay silent. I didn't survive the system just to become part of it. If fighting for fairness makes me the villain in someone else's story, then so be it. But the old world is cracking, and we're not stepping back into it." In court, the case unraveled. Kroll's own emails were subpoenaed. Racist comments. Admission of efforts to sabotage RoomLink's valuation. Threats. The judge threw it out. Kroll left the city shortly after. Deshawn? He stayed. Built. Hired. Listened. And one day, while walking through the lobby with his niece 5 years old, hair in tiny braids, bouncing with joy, she looked up at the tall glass ceiling and said, "Uncle, this looks like a palace." Deshawn smiled. "It is," he said, "but not the kind that keeps people out. The kind that lets everyone in." The lawsuit may have failed, but its shadow lingered. For weeks afterward, Deshawn could feel the tension ripple through the building. Whispers in hallways, judging eyes in the elevators, passive-aggressive emails from certain tenants. As if his very presence disrupted the carefully curated illusion of privilege and purity the Astoria Grand had once clung to. But Deshawn didn't back down. He doubled down on his mission. He launched a building-wide equity audit, something no luxury property in the city had ever attempted. He invited every tenant, worker, cleaner, concierge, and maintenance tech to share their experiences anonymously. He hired a diverse, independent panel of social equity consultants to oversee it. The findings weren't just uncomfortable, they were damning. Tenants of color reported more frequent maintenance delays, stricter fines for minor infractions, and slower application responses. Staff shared stories of being ignored, talked down to, even physically blocked from common areas. Security had logged more suspicious activity reports for guests who didn't look white or wealthy. Deshawn read every line. He didn't flinch. Instead, he released the report publicly. Transparent. Unfiltered. The building board panicked. "You're going to tank our property value," one member snapped at him in a meeting. "No," Deshawn said calmly. "I'm going to raise its humanity." He restructured hiring policies, introduced diversity clauses into the building's vendor contracts, and created a permanent tenants council with real decision-making power. For the first time in the tower's history, everyone's voice would carry weight. But it wasn't just about rules and reports. It was about dignity. One afternoon, Deshawn visited the mailroom. He liked to do it unannounced, some domesto check in, say hello, remind his staff they were seen. That's when he met Luis. Luis was 67, Puerto Rican, and had worked in the building since it opened 20 years ago. He'd seen generations of residents come and go, but had never once been invited to a holiday party or community event. He handled thousands of letters and packages a week, yet not a single tenant had ever asked his last name. Deshawn shook his hand. "Thank you for everything you do, Mr. Rivera." Luis blinked. "No one's ever called me that here." "Well," Deshawn said, smiling, "now they will." He gave Luis a promotion, better pay, benefits, full health care. And during the next community event, a rooftop dinner with tenants and staff together, Luis was honored with a plaque and a standing ovation. It was a small moment, but it echoed deep. Of course, not everyone stayed. Several high-profile tenants sold their units. They grumbled about standards slipping, about political overreach. One even called the building too inclusive now, as if fairness were contagious. But new tenants came: artists, educators, immigrant families, tech workers from marginalized backgrounds who had never imagined living in such a space. The building didn't lose its luxury. It redefined it. Luxury wasn't just chandeliers and concierge desks. It was safety, inclusion, community, knowing your neighbor, sharing a meal across cultures, hearing laughter in the hallways instead of silence soaked in judgment. The media started calling it the People's Penthouse. Deshawn didn't mind the nickname. Still, late at night, he sometimes walked the halls alone. He'd pause at the exact spot in the lobby where the guard had once shoved him out. It wasn't about revenge. It was about memory, reminder, root. The boy who had once stood here soaked in rain still lived inside him. He never wanted to forget him. He was his compass. A year after the lawsuit, Deshawn received an email that stopped him cold. Subject: "Forgive me." It was from Elijah Green, the security guard who had kicked him out that rainy night 5 years ago. Deshawn opened it, heart thudding. "Mr. Jacobs, I'm not asking for sympathy, and I'm not trying to rewrite what happened. But I need to say this. I remember that night. I remember your face. I remember the look in your eyes like I just erased you. I didn't sleep for days after. I followed orders. That's what I told myself. But the truth is, I knew it was wrong. I just didn't want to lose my job. I was tired. I had kids to feed. But still, I should have stood up. I've watched what you've done since. I've watched you turn this place into something human. You didn't just prove me wrong. You proved all of us wrong. If you'd ever let me say it to your face, I'm sorry. Elijah." Deshawn sat with the email for a long time. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he asked his assistant to set up a meeting. When Elijah walked into the penthouse office, he looked 10 years older. The uniform was gone. He wore plain jeans and a faded sweatshirt. His hands trembled slightly. "You didn't have to come," Deshawn said gently. "Yes, I did," Elijah replied. "My son's your age now. I see him in you." There was a long pause. "I lost the job 2 years after that," Elijah admitted. "Too many complaints. Burned out. I deserved it." Deshawn nodded. "So what are you doing now?" "Trying to figure that out." Deshawn stood, walked to the window, then turned. "I'm starting a new program," he said. "Second chances. Real ones. For people who want to unlearn, rebuild, and give back. You want in?" Elijah stared, speechless. "You'd do that after what I did?" "Everyone's more than their worst moment," Deshawn said quietly. "You said sorry. Now show me what you'll do next." Elijah didn't cry, but his silence said everything. By the time the second anniversary of his ownership came, Astoria Grand Tower was something else entirely. It had become a symbol, not of perfection, but of possibility. Deshawn was invited to speak at Columbia, then MIT, then the United Nations. His story wasn't just about real estate, Anna Maria, it was about restoration, about reclaiming space and dignity in a world that told people like him they'd never belong. He used his new platform to launch the Unlock Foundation, dedicated to transforming unjust institutions from within: one lobby, one boardroom, one blueprint at a time. And then came the boy. One Saturday afternoon, as Deshawn was leaving the building, a boy no older than 12 came running up to him, breathless. "Mister," he called out, "you're the guy from the internet." Deshawn turned, smiling. "Sometimes." The boy thrust out a crumpled piece of paper. A sketch. It was the lobby of Astoria Grand. In the center was Deshawn, arms wide, surrounded by people of every race, age, shape, and background. "You drew this?" The boy nodded. "I want to build buildings too. Ones where people don't get kicked out. My mom said you did it first." Deshawn crouched down to his level. "You'll build better ones than me," he said. "And I'll be the first to walk through your lobby." The boy beamed. That night, Deshawn stood once more beneath the glass dome of the lobby, now glowing with soft amber light. It was quieter now. No press, no protests, just the hum of a place alive with purpose. He remembered every step it took to get here. Every insult, every closed door, every coded phrase, every cracked ceiling he refused to accept. And yet, he hadn't built this for revenge. He built it for them. For the delivery workers walking in the back door. For the cleaners. For the kids dreaming of keys that opened more than just apartments. He built it for his younger self. And maybe, just maybe, he'd built it for the world to believe something else was possible. It was nearly midnight when Deshawn found himself standing in front of apartment 101, a modest unit tucked in the far corner of the ground floor. The hallway here was quieter, less polished than the upper floors by design. These were the new inclusionary housing units, built during renovations, and they housed people who once would have never been approved under the old board's unspoken standards. He knocked twice. A young woman opened the door. Her face lit up. "Mr. Jacobs?" He nodded. "Did I come too late?" "No, of course not. Come in. She's been waiting all day." Inside, the apartment was warm, filled with the smell of spice and something sweet baking in the oven. Sitting on a worn couch was a woman in her late 60s, her silver hair wrapped in a silk scarf. Her eyes were sharp and kind. "Mrs. Hawkins," Deshawn said, smiling. "It's good to see you again." She reached out for his hand. "Baby, I nearly fainted when the letter said I was approved. Thought it was a scam." He sat with her a while, sipping tea, listening to her talk about the years she worked as a school janitor, about being denied again and again for housing in buildings like this, places where she scrubbed floors but wasn't allowed to sleep. Her words hit deep. Too many people like her had kept the city running while being kept at arm's length from its wealth. "I can finally rest," she whispered. "Not just sleep but rest." That night, when Deshawn returned to the penthouse, he didn't sleep. He just watched the lights of the city flicker beneath him and thought, "We're just getting started." Over the next 2 years, the Unlock Foundation grew into a national model. Luxury towers in Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, and even Dallas reached out. Not just for branding but real change. Deshawn didn't spread thin. He chose 5 cities, 5 buildings, 5 teams trained under him, each with a story, each with scars. He believed in local power, in hiring from the communities they served. He believed in transforming from within and turning silent lobbies into spaces that welcomed sound, culture, diversity, and joy. And most of all, believed in ownership. Not just of property, but of story. One day, while giving a talk at a National Housing Equity Summit in D.C., a young black woman stood during the Q&A. She wore a blazer 2 sizes too big and shoes that had seen too many miles. She said, "I used to work front desk at a tower in Miami. I quit after my manager told me not to smile too much at guests that didn't look like they belonged. I thought about that for months. Then I saw your story. It made me believe we don't always have to accept the rules they hand us. I just got my real estate license." The room erupted in applause. Deshawn met her afterward and gave her his number. "If you ever want to build something," he told her, "I'll back you." But success, like pressure, brings new kinds of heat. Some legacy developers began pushing back. Lobbyists tried to pass ordinances that would limit mixed-income integration in luxury spaces. Anonymous op-eds called his model utopian, dangerous, even a threat to tradition. And then came the smear campaign. One morning, headlines blared. Jacobs' empire linked to unapproved tenant backgrounds. Security lapses in inclusive skyscraper program. Too much too fast? It was deliberate, calculated, funded. His board begged him to slow down, make compromises, tone down the messaging. But Deshawn looked around the room and asked one question. How many of you would be in this building if the old rules still applied? Silence. Then one hand went up. Then another. Then a dozen. They stayed with him, because this wasn't just real estate. This was resistance. On the 5th anniversary of Deschamps' purchase of the Astoria Grand, a celebration was held in the very same lobby where it had all begun. But it didn't look the same. The marble was still there, but now decorated with murals by local artists. The chandelier still sparkled, but below it stood tables of food from every continent. Jazz played, kids ran, elders danced. Tenants laughed with staff like neighbors instead of strangers. Deschamps stood near the doors, watching it unfold. A familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Man, you turned this place into a block party." He turned to see Marcus, his childhood friend, the one who had started RoomLink with him, the one who had quietly left the spotlight years ago to raise his daughter and avoid the grind. "Didn't think you'd show," Deschamps said. Marcus clapped him on the back. "Wouldn't miss it." They stood together, arms crossed, watching as the building breathed with life. "Remember when we used to deliver to these places?" Marcus said. "Carrying bags for people who wouldn't even make eye contact?" Deschamps nodded. "Now they send us emails asking for a meeting." They both laughed, and for a moment, they were just boys again, dreaming too big for the rooms they were raised in. Later that night, Deschamps walked the halls alone one last time. He passed the elevator, paused, pressed the button. When it opened, a man in a delivery uniform stood inside, holding 2 large bags. Young, nervous, maybe 22. He blinked when he saw Deschamps. "A wrong floor." Deschamps smiled. "No such thing here. Who's it for?" The young man checked his phone. "Unit 3002. Penthouse," Deschamps said, stepping aside. "Go ahead." The man hesitated. "Seriously? You're not security?" "No," Deschamps replied, grinning. "I'm the owner." The man's eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry. No need. Just remember this moment. One day you might buy a building too." He gave the young man a nod and walked away. 1 month later, Deschamps stepped onto the stage of the Global Human Rights Forum in Geneva. He wore no tie. He carried no notes. He began with the story, his story. He told them about the rain, the sushi, the silence of being unseen, and the roar of returning. And then he said, "Injustice is most dangerous when it's polite, when it comes dressed in rules, in policies, in quiet rejections that don't make headlines." I wasn't kicked out because I broke the law. I was kicked out because I broke the illusion. So I decided to stop asking for entry. I bought the building. But ownership means nothing if the door only opens for me. So I opened it for everyone. The room rose in thunderous applause. 10 years later, a new plaque was installed at the front of Astoria Grand Tower. It read, "This lobby once told a young man he didn't belong. He came back to tell the world it was wrong. May this building forever welcome who you are, not just what you have." And beneath it, in bold gold letters, "Owned and reimagined by Deschamps Jacobs. In memory of every door ever closed." The end.